Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Alright, so we're in Championship 3, Episode 7, which means that we have a full new group, and after the fiasco of my last episode, where I lost after a long time of going undefeated, it was nice to actually just have a fresh scene, new opponents, and so let's just jump right into it here. I was fairly excited to see who my opponent was in my first round because his name was Dragon.
Tractor! Tractor!
As you can see, my opponent is running a Gear 11 6-star General Skywalker, and that immediately kind of gave me some flashbacks from my last episode where I just couldn't beat General Skywalker for a long time. So anyways, he's significantly weaker at 6-star because he's only Gear 11 and instead of Relic 7. So looking at our stats, there wasn't really that much difference except for look at their relics at the very bottom of the screen. I have 3 at tier 7 and they have 9. So and I'll show you a screenshot of that in a minute just to illustrate just how crazy that is. In terms of other gear, I had them beat in Gear 13, Gear 12, and I also had a 13 Zeta advantage, which is a pretty significant margin. Finally, our stats for the individual successes at Grand Arena. I've beat my opponent by about 30k in lifetime banners, which is pretty telling. My opponent hadn't enjoyed a lot of success in their various matchups. But look at this screen here. Look at the top 6 characters in that top row. They're all Relic 7. And then below that, there's another 4 of Relic 7. It's huge. It's really intimidating, to be honest. When I got on, my opponent had already attacked, and they had attacked before the 2-hour mark had already passed. They attacked right away, which is great because I had more information on what exactly they would do and what I needed to be able to accomplish. So I'll go over my defenses in a little bit. But the first zone was really interesting. It had a all Relic 7 General Skywalker squad, except for General Skywalker himself, and then a really undergeared Kira squad. And then the top zone had some interesting teams as well. The Padme team was worrisome, had a few really high relics, but the Kylo Ren team and the Karth team, they were kind of head scratchers, really not much of a challenge, to be honest. Alright, so looking at my opponent's teams, I needed to have a plan, of course, on how to attack. The General Skywalker team was, of course, the first priority, but at 6-star, I knew that my Commander Luke team would probably be able to beat it. I've had a little bit of practice about that, or doing that in the arena, and even though they had high relics, all the different clones were Relic 7, I figured I'd still be able to beat them. My Commander Luke squad did recently get a little bit of an upgrade, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I should be able to beat that. But that was my priority number 1. If I couldn't beat it with my Commander Luke squad, then I would hopefully, I'd still have my Padme squad available. I would have my Darth Revan team. So a lot of different tools to be able to beat that. And then the Kira Scoundrels team was pretty weak, but I decided I wanted to use my troopers there just because I was pretty sure I'd be able to get full banners really fast. And, looking at all the other teams that were around, my troopers would be useful against a couple teams on the top zone, but they weren't necessarily better than any of my other squads in that regard. So wanted to try that. And then I really didn't have a plan for who took out the first order. I had almost any team available to be able to beat that. A first order squad with Kylo Ren with leadership Zeta is great, but his didn't have that. So really not scary at all. Phoenix could probably push it over with one finger. The Padme team was interesting, and I figured I'd probably end up using Darth Revan there in case, my opponent was going to put Darth Revan in the back, but I kind of doubted it, just because they put General Skywalker in there, and then if they wanted to put Darth Revan, if they really wanted to mess with me, they'd have put Revan in the top zone, in my opinion. And then in the back zone, I really wasn't sure what to expect either. I figured they'd probably put their Geonosians in there, because they had some okay gear, and then they didn't really have a good Nightsisters team at all, but their General Grievous squad was okay, so I figured probably Grievous was in the back, but I really wasn't sure. Anyways, there wasn't a ton of planning necessary. I just needed to knock over the first two squads. The General Skywalker team could potentially end me at any given moment if I had another meltdown. So, I needed to be cautious with that. But then after that, I figured I'd probably be able to run the table against my opponent. So let's just jump into it. First priority target is General Skywalker. Alright, so I wasn't really sure which team I wanted to bring, other than Commander Luke, so you want to take Luke and Han and Chewie, but then I wasn't sure what supporting cast to take, and at the end I realized that I needed to take R2 because R2 didn't really have a home, and he was really good in this match anyways, and then I also wanted to be able to take my old Ben, which I had recently Zeta'd. Now I did put the wrong Zeta on him. I put the Taunt Zeta, which is great in its own right, but really to be a really great counter character, he needs the other Zeta, the one that everyone thinks is worthless. So that's and that's the secret tech that Team Instinct always, that everyone is deriding them for having. It's pretty non-obvious in my opinion. So the very first thing I did was stun Rex because I didn't want him to get his buff off and feed everyone turn meter. And as it turned out, he was fast enough that even after a stun, he was able to give everyone turn meter before I got the topple on General Skywalker. And maybe the better move here, just because Skywalker is only gear 11, is maybe I should have just tried to take him out and topple him on my first shot, but that obviously didn't happen, so let's just continue on. Now, after you topple him, I think the prevailing wisdom is generally you want to take out 5s, and, doing that is important just because if you take out Rex or Echo, then 5s will just sacrifice himself anyways, and then Rex and Echo will be turbocharged or boosted or whatever you want to call it. So, taking out 5s is better because they don't actually get the bonus after you take them out. Now, I was able to get the first topple, but I didn't even take anyone out. Which is problematic. I was able to put stealth on everyone except for R2, so R2 bit the bullet there. I just needed to keep focusing on these clones, and so this was already turning into a potentially really ugly match, but the good thing was that Skywalker wasn't actually doing enough damage to me to really be that threatening, and now all the clones are starting to drop off, so I felt pretty confident here. Even though there's only the 3 guys left, I figured even if I wasn't able to take out Skywalker here, I would probably be able to, just finish him off with a second team. And I did have a little bit of leeway. Like, my opponent had not done extremely well on their attacks, which we'll cover later, of course. But, I felt fairly confident that as long as I could full clear my opponent, then I'd be good to go. So, Ahsoka got taken out, and then after that, Skywalker doesn't have a huge health pool or anything, so took him out. 51 banners, not a great score, but it was a first time win, and it was an excellently modded team, all Relic 7, really tough team to be able to beat, so happy enough with that result. And then, after that, I got the gift of being able to take out this Kira team that was just, frankly, it was kind of an embarrassing team. It wasn't very good in a lot of ways. There was some, Gear 8 there, and I don't know when the last time I saw Gear 8 on defense. So I decided to take Snow Trooper out, and maybe that was foolish. I don't really know. I wanted an undersized win, though, because you want those whenever you can get them so that you can get the feat. And so, I figured with this Gear 8 Vander, I'd probably just be able to win anyways. And L3 was taunting a bunch, but as it turned out, all my AoEs just rendered everything that they had to do completely useless. So 61 banners there. Really easy. I expected some more difficult defense in the back, really. It couldn't have gotten much easier than that Kira team, so figured my opponent had something nasty in the back. So I was really surprised when I saw Gear 12 Geonosians and Gear 8 Zombie.
What would you say you do here?
So After the back zone ended up being a little bit disappointing in terms of difficulty level. The Geonosians are definitely a credible threat because you needed the right team to be able to beat them. But I still had all my meta teams for the most part available. The only real other team that was really going to be able to threaten me was Padme, just because there's some Relic 7s in there, and they're well modded, and my opponent had a few good things going with it. It wasn't the best composition in my opinion, but the first thing I did here was just add I did the lightning, and I know a lot of people like to do fear first against Padme, and that's not necessarily a bad move because you get the first round of attacks other than with Padme, but I really like putting shock on everyone because it prevents them from gaining buffs, and there are a couple buffs that Padme guarantees that her team is able to get, but by and large, there's not a ton of buffs that they can get through there. So just being able to do that, and then once I reduced Skywalker or Anakin, whoever, to 50% health, then I was able to get Death Mark on Padme, take her out, and after that it was just a slaughter. So pretty quick and easy win. I don't regret having gone full strength though, because that match can get pretty ugly if you're not careful. So we're kind of just bouncing around here. The Old Republic team can basically be taken out by anyone, and the First Order team can basically be taken out by anyone, plus whatever dregs you have left in your roster. So just decided not to pay any attention to them right now, and instead go for the Geonosians, who were the last credible threat in the defense here, other than perhaps my opponent's ships. So I typically try to resist taking Traya against Geonosians just because it's a pretty nerve-wracking affair, and even though it's kind of satisfying watching all of their health and protection shrink slowly because of Traya's leadership and what filthy things it does to them, this wasn't really going to be a hard match. Like, Traya was absolutely up to beating all Gear 12 Geonosians, and so I decided to underman it. Usually I'd want to take Thrawn because Thrawn was actually faster than their Geonosian Brood Alpha, and so being able to get the fracture off right away was going to be nice. Or being able to pass off Isolate to Traya first would be nice, but you want undersized wins whenever you can get them, and whoever my next opponent was, I wasn't really guaranteed to be able to take them out with min-sized squads, so I decided I'd just go under strength here, and once you take out the Brood Alpha, then the rest of these guys just fold pretty quick, and I hit the Brute, even though you don't actually have to kill the Brute because he dies if all the other Geonosians drop. I didn't have to hit him. I was just looking for an opportunity to stall out just long enough for Scion to be able to get his hit in here is special because that regrows protection. And so you see he regrew his protection, and now I have my Annihilate, may as well take it, and 60 banners here. One of my characters dropped 1 point of protection, but otherwise a pretty efficient win. Better than usually you can do with Traya, to be honest. That doesn't necessarily happen because people are starting to gear their Geonosians, other than my opponent, of course. Well, and to be fair, I guess my 2 million GP alt doesn't have very strong Geonosians either, so there's that. But the next threat here, I wanted to be able to take out these Nightsisters, and there's a Gear 8 zombie, and what I wanted to do was pretend to be like Klesso, because he's doing a really cool thing with his First Order, using Watt on offense, and I've never used Watt on offense at any point, and so I was here like trying to read all the different texts and stuff. So the point here, like, if you give the attacking tech to First Order Executioner, he can prevent revives, and so if he's just destroying the Nightsisters here, every time he takes one of them out, he takes them out forever. Like, they can't do their revives shenanigans, and so I'm obviously pretty awkward using this team. I don't really know what I'm doing. I watched Klesso once, and then I didn't rewatch it. I didn't study this. I honestly, at this point, I was feeling pretty confident that I'd just be able to full clear my opponent and call it a day, but so I was winging it. I actually think that you're supposed to put a different tech on first from Watt, and then put the killing people tech from Executioner on later. But clearly, this is working as well. So took out Talzin. She came back because I didn't use First Order Executioner to take her out. And this is actually working to my advantage anyways, because for every character that First Order kills, there's a feat currently you have to kill for 24 characters with First Order over the course of the next couple weeks. So, I wasn't that concerned. Nest with Nightsisters is always a little nerve-wracking, except I think this Nest was only like gear 11, which is also something I don't really see. It's the same gear level as my 2 million GP alt. So you have that parallel again, and I'm not really going through these steps very efficiently, but finally, Executioner just went and did his crazy rampage and killed Talzin for good, killed Daka for good, and then Asajj has relatively high relic levels, so I didn't take her out in one hit, but Nest got taken out by a random attempt to stun with Kylo. Like, I was only trying to stun her, and it just killed her because she's only gear 11, and that's awful. So now we're just killing different characters. I thought for a little bit about just trying to kill Zombie forever, and that, get max banners, or get the max feet right away. But as it stood, it was a gear 8 zombie, which means that it has a limited number of times it can come back. So I decided to just finish it instead. And I didn't have really a good way to regenerate Watt's health after all of that. And so he brought us down a little bit. So 59 banners against that really awful Nightsisters Nest team. And now we're up to facing the Kylo Ren team and the Old Republic team without a Karth Zeta. And so I had a choice of whatever teams I wanted to take, basically. I still had Padme left randomly, and I had Jedi Knight Revan against these two. So I decided to take Padme here first, just because Padme does pretty good with, if you get your protection high enough, then hopefully you're not actually going to take any damage. And so Padme was faster than all of these characters, so she put her buff up. So everyone has all their stacks of bonus protection, and that's turning into courage in some cases. But I was looking at Shaak Ti. I don't use Shaak Ti too often. My Ahsoka's actually on defense right now, so I use Shaak Ti. I'm like, which one calls the assist and which one gives the buff? I wasn't sure. So good team to practice on, of course. And so Anakin went. He did his AoE because I like that thing. And we're just going. Karth got taken out because he's really squishy and easy to kill, and because I didn't like him. And so we're just doing all these different things here. General Kenobi went a ton of times as a counter and was actually doing some credible damage to Zalbar. So I should actually look at the mods that my opponent put on, because General Kenobi should probably never be doing credible damage to Zalbar if he's modded right. But apparently someone lost protection there, but 60 banners is just fine. And getting another understrength win, of course, is always nice. And so all we have left is this massive disappointment of a First Order team. And I had my Jedi Revan team available. I also had a bunch of other things that I could have used. But I decided to go undersized here with Jedi Revan. And for a little bit, I was kind of second-guessing myself, just because you can really get yourself into trouble against certain First Order teams just because of the number of debuffs you can do, and the amount of defense on the original Kylo Ren and stuff. So I was thinking that through just to be thorough, and what I realized was that their Kylo Ren didn't have his leadership Zeta, or any Zeta for that matter, and so there wasn't going to be any kind of anything going on in this squad. Like, that, I probably should have used a more interesting team, to be honest. I probably should have tried Phoenix or something, just to give you guys something. But Phoenix are in exile right now, and I just wanted to make sure I would win. After losing my last match, I wanted to make sure that I could beat my opponent. And if it's just the kind of bonehead play. Like if you lose with Phoenix and then you compound your errors by jumping into another match without thinking about it and lose again, like not that I had any expectation of failing against that, but you drop enough banners and then your opponent doesn't end up being able to is able to full clear you, like that could turn into a loss pretty quick. And frankly, I mean, it's fun to mess around and try weird teams and stuff. I get that, and I like to do that sometimes, but in Grand Arena, I guess I take it too seriously. Like, I always want to be able to win and, give myself the best chance to win. And trying to mess around against a team before your win is guaranteed is probably the best way to lose, especially maybe not in this particular match, but just getting into the habit of doing that is a pretty risky affair, if in my opinion. And so my opponent did take his Akbar fleet, and I had my Negotiator here, and this lineup is actually best against Negotiator. So actually I don't really know what I would take against Falcon. In my current ship's arena, only negotiators are left. There aren't any home ones at all that I can think of, so decided that I would just take this squad. I was pretty confident that I'd be able to beat them. Looking at my opponent's gear levels and stuff, it wasn't that credible of a threat, and they didn't have Houndstooth. I assumed that they had Houndstooth for offense to go with their negotiator. But that just meant that Ghost was in there, and I could take Ghost out pretty quick. So, 61 banners here, quick and easy. Maybe not the optimal lineup, but just fine here in this case. So, I got a pretty decent score, 1926, doesn't suck. So, I did manage to win that. And then my opponent ended up not attacking. I know that you can see the attack phase says 21 and a half hours remaining, but the reality is that my opponent was not able to full clear me at all, and so the picture that I would actually show, the screenshot that I would show, if you guys wanted to see, the post game would look exactly like this, except for, I would say, review phase on the top left instead. So, a relatively easy win here, and, another full clear versus not being full cleared. I really like that. I could get used to it.
That was easy.
So I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about my defenses here. I won't go at length here, but just my defenses are pretty different. You can see that Newt is with Asajj now for their separatist synergies, and Zombie is taunting. And then I put the Zeta on Talzin lead finally, so I could actually run a decent, if not amazing, team with Talzin. I actually meant to put my Geonosians in the back there and swap with one of the teams back there, and I'll talk about that a little bit more very soon. But that was a mistake on my part, and then I just have my standard Django Bounty Hunter team, which actually got a defense here. And then the Grievous squad does not have BB-8 in there. I never got to defend with BB-8 at any point, and so I decided it was just kind of pointless. Like, I could use BB-8 elsewhere, and you'll see that shortly. Nothing much to say here about my ships. If you can beat Millennium Falcon with Biston, then you're probably good to go. But this back zone I wanted to talk about. My opponent didn't even try to attack my General Skywalker team, which is great. It's not the most powerful squad. It is relatively decent. My Echo is maxed out. He's pretty solid. But then I put something that I don't think I've ever put Jedi Training Ray on defense at any point in any game mode. And I have her. I wanted to take R2-D2 out of the team, so I put L3 in there. I managed to get her up to gear 13 right before lock, so that's exciting. My opponent failed against him once, and so I'm actually going to change my defenses a little bit. I intended originally to put Geonosians in this back squad so that in the front zone, people would probably use Traya to be able to take out one of my two teams with, either my Relics and Nest or my Mother Talzin squad. And, if they used that, then hopefully they would get to the back zone and wouldn't have Traya to lean on to be able to take out my Geonosians. And so, that's what I'm going to try in my next phase, potentially. I'm not really sure. I am going to probably try to change things up every time I have defenses, just because people are starting to watch this channel and they'll know what my defenses are. So, that was the original plan, though, was to put Geonosians in the back. So we'll just see what happens. As it stands, I got a full clear without being full cleared, so I'm always happy with that. So I wanted to break out the sloppiness ratio graphic one more time. I don't do this every episode, but I did want to see how effective my opponent's attacks were, assuming that they had been able to clear all of my teams on the first try, just to be able to see what level of efficiency, my teams are being able to take their banners down, and so we're assuming that, our final score is going to be the score with no fails, and I had to go a little bit different this time, because usually my opponents full clear me, because my defenses are maybe a little tricky, but they're not necessarily super hard to solve. And so, I usually get full cleared. My opponent gets full cleared, and usually, hopefully, I'm more efficient. But in this case, they did not clear my back zone, and so you can see that I'm operating under, their max score after clearing the 3 zones that they did was 1639, and that means, so that was their max score. That was their biggest score. Their total score was 1572, which is 67. That means they dropped 67 banners against me in the course of taking out my different teams. And so, they did fail one of their attacks. And so when you look at it, assuming that they didn't fail one of their attacks against my Django squad, because they obviously had the team to be able to beat him eventually. When you look at that, then my opponent had still, over the course of taking out 5 ground teams and my ships, dropped 47 banners. And, I was 11 points short of being able to get a soft max score, which is just fine. 1926 is pretty good, especially because ships kind of brings me down because I'm using Negotiator and I don't have max stars on it, so I can't bring all my reinforcements. They don't give me as many points. So, I'm happy enough with my efficiency. I knew that I was efficient, but, this ratio that I'm showing is just a good way of kind of seeing how efficient my defense has been after my opponent attacks, and I can't actually watch each individual attack that they're doing, and be able to kind of record or screenshot their results each time. So taking out 47 banners is great, but my opponent was not necessarily the top of his class in terms of attacking, so I don't know how useful this number is, but I think it's pretty interesting. So here's proof that I actually did beat my opponent, as bad as I have been demonstrating to you guys. So I did get the win, and happy to be back in the win column, but my next round opponent is going to be really tough. They have meeting once again another Relic 7 General Skywalker, with supporting cast, and so it's going to be a tricky one, and I don't necessarily want this matchup. I was hoping for the finals for this, or that my opponent would just lose, but this is something that I need to be ready to face, and I do have a few things prepared, so stay tuned for next time, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Zareth prevails.